Thank you so much for staying tuned. Welcome to another edition of International Forum. I am Wilson Omasha. We're going straight back to what is going on in Europe. Yeah, Russia and Ukraine. The war has been going on now going to 4 years, and it's like the war seems to be not coming to an end anytime soon. People have been watching. They've been waiting. They're looking at how things can just take a turn or take a dive for the betterment of Ukraine, because it stands right now Ukraine is a theater. Yes, they've done one or two damages to Russia, but it can be quantified to the damage done by Russia. When I talk about Ukraine, Kyiv constantly bombarded by drones. Eastern part of the country, talk about Ukraine, have been sacked by Russian forces. Zaporizhia, you know this story too well. And the pressure is mounting. And guess what? The winter is approaching. Despite the sanction, despite all, Putin seems not to be listening to anyone. Donald did his best, but it's like his best is not good enough. What do you think Trump will do next? Donald is known to be that man, to be very, very vocal. If he says something, he's going to see it through, but this time it's like an unstable object in collision with an immovable object. So it's like cancelling out each other. Well, today is all about the war, a critical look at the theater as the winter approaches. With me here in the studio, I have a legal practitioner, a legal affairs commentator. Join me to welcome Barrister Emmanuel Obakpolo. Barrister, thank you so much for coming on today's show.
It's a delight being here. Good afternoon, Wilson.
All right. Going to the fourth year right now, it's like there is no glimmer of hope, no glimmer for peace, not even the glimmer. I mean, it's only branch to say, come to the round table, let's talk about what is happening in Ukraine, occasioned by a Russian offensive. Some are saying Russia was about fought, Russia was provoked. Had it been a US to be in the position of Russia, they would have done twice, or even 4 times as worse as what Russia is doing. Remember when they talk about the red line in 1967 or thereabout, where Russia was going to have a base in Cuba. America said, if you draw or if you cross the red line, the world is going to bleed. And now Russia is not making the world bleed, but a country is bleeding, and it's bleeding previously. Ukraine. Take it up from there.
Yes, and when you go back to memory lane, and before the war commenced, we saw a lot of threats by Putin, the president of Russia, wherein he even threatened with the production of a weapon called Satan II. And we thought Satan II was going to do the damage, and Putin, according to him then, he did say that he was going to release it, and when he does, that the whole world will sniff, and there is going to be a shake from the foundation of the earth. And some of us gave a different interpretation. We said, like myself, I did say that with or without Satan II, or Satan II was mere symbolic. But we have come to see that the man meant business, just like he said. But how Ukraine, on the other hand, was able to absorb the heat from Russia to this very moment is something that one may not be privy to tell how it did happen or how it went. But again, when you take a summary of the war just now, you would agree with me that Ukraine is really going through a lot of pain, being hit left, right, center. And all the promises that we saw from NATO and even from some sympathizers, European countries, from that did promise Ukraine on how they were going to be of assistance to Ukraine, perhaps to help Ukraine to absorb the heat that would come from Russia. Just now, I will tell you that that is not feasible. Though a lot of assistance was made to Ukraine, but we've also seen that on the side of Russia, who is the big brother with the big stick, they've also got some mercenaries assistance just now there are allegations even from South Africa here that some South Africans have been involved as mercenaries for Russia. And you know, Africa being considered the dark world, there is a possibility, or there are possibilities, as the case may be, that some Africans may be the scapegoats, wherein they may be given the toga of mercenaries. Meanwhile, they are only being used as test to the war. So Africans could be disadvantaged to be used as, in quotes now, mercenaries, why it is not mercenaries, but as victims of the crisis that is going on between Russia and Ukraine, perhaps because of the kind of system we have from this part of the world. Now, going to the war proper. Just now, Russia is pushing towards the border between Ukraine and another NATO ally, Poland. And just a few hours ago, to be precise, there was a heat that hit near the border of Poland in Ukraine, and a city, one of the viable and productive city in Ukraine called Polorovsky, something like that. Yeah, is where Russia is gradually heading towards, and God forbid that Russia succeed in getting that city. Now they have Dombrowski on the Dakar. They are heading towards the region of Donbass. And if they now succeed in getting that, what is left? Because even Kiev, that is the capital of Ukraine, we've seen that Kiev has been hit severally. And just now, Ukraine is experiencing some partial darkness as it is. And these are people who have not seen anything like darkness before. But just now, they are going through a lot of heat. And like you did say, the winter is approaching. So what is going to be the fate of Ukraine? And France just promised Ukraine some 100 jet fighters. So you begin to see that Ukraine has lived on promises from European countries and NATO members. But we will not be see that force from Ukraine, because Ukraine, even from the outset of the crisis, the war, Ukraine has been a younger brother to Russia. But just now, we've seen the big stick of the elder brother on the younger one, and it's really hitting Ukraine hard. So I, for one, we thought that when Donald Trump emerges as the president of America, or immediately he was declared as the president of America, by January, where he will be sworn in, which he is now the president of America, as at that time a candidate in the election, we thought that he would come, and with his president being respected by...
we'll come to the issue of Donald Trump.
Okay.
In course of this discussion. Now, you talked about what is really happening between these two great countries. You talked about Russia being the big brother, Ukraine the younger one. But it stands right now, one is really hammering on the other. And it's like Russia is beginning to fulfill their promise, saying that the eastern part of Ukraine, Donbass region, definitely will be part of Mother Russia, because they're responding to the cry of the citizens of Ukraine that are of Russian origin, that they want to be part of Mother Russia. Now that winter is approaching, do you see or feel anything that's going to make it difficult for Russia to outrun the Donbass region?
Yes, I think that it is going to... Russia may have a slow down towards the heat, because this is a period where any country that is involved in any crisis or war tends to slow down because of the hot and the hotness of the atmosphere at that time, or this period, so to speak. And if you look from when the war started and to this very moment, for the past 1 year now, Russia has been slow towards their bombardment, even the use of drones and other missiles that was used to prosecute the war. They've been that slow, and I think they will be slower this time, because if since the peace that was attempted to achieve was not able to achieve at this moment, it really goes to tell that Ukraine is really getting the heat. And
hold on, now you talk about Russia getting slow. I'm not saying that this war, with the approach of the winter, might make Russia outrun Ukrainian forces with ease. Because they did it the other time. No gas, no electricity. They are crying for manpower and weapons. And Russia seems to be having all this at their back and core.
Yes, that is true. That even just now we'll be able to capture situations where mercenaries from North Korea and some other sympathizers of Russia are beginning to give Russia assistance. But on the side of Ukraine, we cannot really tell if Ukraine is giving the supposed assistance as promised by NATO and other European countries that are sympathizers with Ukraine. So, if Russia tries to or want to really get a hit of Ukraine at this moment, it will be devastating on Ukraine.
You just want to go for a break or return. We'll definitely continue with this analysis. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, reaching you live from Benin City, Edo State, Nigeria. I'm with me here in the studio is Barrister Emmanuel Obakola. We're taking a look at the Russia-Ukraine war, a critical look at the theater. You know, the winter is fast approaching. So you're making a point when we talk about who was hit this winter.
Well, if from where I stop, if Ukraine gets the necessary support, it may not be easier for Russia to run through. But if they don't get the necessary support, Russia is going to run through Ukraine, particularly at this epoch. So what I think, somebody did say, and I quite agree with the person, that peace is priceless and peace is super expensive. So if we are to go by that, I think if there's any time that the world needs to intervene to ensure that there is peace between these two brothers.
Okay.
I think this is the moment.
Okay, fine. Now, what you said, Ukraine has been dwelling on faith promises. They talked about going to other countries, other nations for help. Promises were made, but Zelensky specifically requested for a long-range missile, weapon that could really hit the heart of Russia. Now, what do you think is impeding the country, the world, vis-a-vis the U.S. from heeding to that particular request? Ukraine said, look, if you can give us that weapon, that'll be the beginning of the end of the war. After all, they're able to hit Mother Russia with ease.
One is surprised that at this very moment, Zelensky is going up and down looking for assistance, despite all the promises that were made to him before the war was being prosecuted from the outset of it. Because if you look at it, I think I will give a term to Zelensky to be able to manage this war for about 4 years now or more. But again, if you want to consider the fact that when you go into war and you choose to go into war, to prosecute a war, then you must first of all count the cost of what was going to come out of that war. So just now, I think that Zelensky didn't take time to count the cost. And that is why with all the faith promises here and there, the man is busy running up and down looking for how he could get assistance so that he can secure his country. But I want to tell you that I think what he's just doing just now is damage control, because a lot of damage has been done to Ukraine. Ukraine is bleeding. That we must not shy from that. So if indeed that those countries, sister countries, who did promise that they were going to give assistance, were really ready to give assistance to Ukraine, why after 4 years? Why is it taking so much time? Because long-range weapon, I think Russia is using long-range weapon against Ukraine.
But no country wants to give Ukraine. They don't want to give them permission to use it. So the question now is, are these countries afraid of what Russia would do to them to give Ukraine that type of weapon?
No, it goes to tell the nature of man, generally, that man by nature can fail you by whatever promise or promises they've given to you. That is what it goes to show. That look, you must not rely on the promises of any person. whether or not that person is close to you, whether or not that person is a brother or a sister or an uncle, whether or not that person is so special or super special to you.
But
what you should do,
we're talking about international relations here, allies.
but it has failed because even NATO that lured Ukraine to join it just now have failed Ukraine. And if you look at Zelensky has been going up and down, crying, lamenting on what his country is going through, despite all the promises, all the assurances that have been made to him. Even when Donald Trump was on him, you saw the first meeting with him was a disaster, a calamity that also came out to show that, look, you need to go and count the cost again, whether you really want to, whether you intend to prosecute this war. So the war just now is shifting towards one direction. And which direction? Towards the direction of Ukraine. Ukraine is getting the hit. Zelensky is doing damage control. But the question now is, how long will he continue with this damage control? If save that these countries who have made promises of long-range weapon to him should be able to give to him, so that the man himself will be able to send some of these long-range weapons so to get the hit. Because where the war is balanced, then I think there will be room for peace. But just now, the war is not balanced.
All right,
and that is why the man is shouting.
Now, so Poland has this view that it's like even the U.S. don't want to tempt Russia, that they're afraid of Russia. That's why they're not wanting to, release the long-range weapon. Because when Putin heard of that, he gave a stern warning that they should do it. Europe will bleed. The war, or let's say the world, might bleed. Do you see Russia feeling that threat if peradventure the U.S. or NATO choose to supply long-range weapon to Ukraine?
You know, if NATO does supply long-range weapon to Ukraine, I see Putin slowing down. I think that will necessitate or speed up the idea or principle of peace accord. I think
Putin
so.
slowing down, getting more and more angry and doing the unthinkable.
Because
remember that in the course of this war, when Ukraine was almost at the forefront, Putin signed a note of warning, and it's like they backtracked. Are they scared of the man, Vladimir Putin?
I think the man is somebody that should be scared of. Because somebody who has his mind at his back, his heart is at his back. Somebody who can tell you, this is what I will do, and he will do it. Particularly when it comes to destruction. So that kind of person should be taken seriously. That kind of person you should soft pedal when you are handling that kind of person. But I think diplomacy was not applied in this matter. I think so. If from the outset of it, there were proper diplomacy, then I think this war wouldn't have gotten to this extent. But because some persons were bent on using Ukraine as a test of the strength of Russia, have succeeded to see that what they thought was not really what they would achieve. Because just now, you use Ukraine as a bait to test the strength of Russia, and Russia has proven its strength. Yes, even despite the super nature of Russia, when you want to compare it with Ukraine, you can now see that Russia is also getting mercenaries, also getting assistance from other sympathizers with her.
So also is Ukraine.
But Ukraine is not getting...
Weapons were given to Ukraine except for the long-range weapon that can target the heart of Russia, which is the Kremlin. So why would you say that Ukraine has not been given support?
No, the assurances, the promises that were made to reach Ukraine is not being fulfilled. Ukraine is only getting the surface. When you compare the two countries, Russia and Ukraine, even before the war, you would agree that Ukraine is the big brother. There is no doubt about that. Now, when the war started with all the promises, the big brother who has the bigger strength, who has the might, the super might, is being assisted by some sympathizers of her. Then you, the small brother, is just getting a surface of the assistance that were promised her. So you cannot now say that there was equal strength in the prosecution of this war. That has been ruled out. Then, if that has been ruled out, what should Ukraine do? NATO and other European countries who have indeed made promises. You cannot fight Russia by giving short-range weapons only. Weapons to protect the boundaries or the territories of Ukraine.
But see,
you cannot only do
Ukrainians were given drones. How do you get the drones? They use these drones to infiltrate Russia and dealt serious blow. Don't mean according to the size of Russia, their power, their oil, you just name it. I mean, supposed to be given to these guys. Are you saying it's not enough?
It's not enough. Ukraine just now needs more assistance. If indeed those who wore Ukraine into this war meant well for Ukraine, they should give them long-range weapons. So that by the time Russia, because this war, the prosecution of this war is indeed in Ukraine. Russia just only got, Ukraine only made an attempt towards Russia. And immediately Russia saw that attempt, and that attempt succeeded as at that time. They quickly looked for how they could waive it.
Yeah, like countermeasures.
Yes. So they brought in countermeasures. Now they'll be able to know the strength of Ukraine and perhaps those who are in support of Ukraine. So what do? Change tactics. I think there is need to change the tactics here. And the way to change the tactics is the supply to Ukraine of long-range weapons. So that by the time there is heat in Moscow, there is heat in other regions of Ukraine, of Russia rather, then maybe Putin will have a rethink. If he thinks he wants to then use Satan II to shake the foundation of the war like he did say, then it could lead to another, it could metamorphose rather to another form of war, not Russia-Ukraine war. Maybe perhaps even Putin in his arrogance and pride is also conscious of that fact. And that is why he is only doing the taking the battle rather to Ukraine to ensure that all of this, the prosecution of this war will be in Ukraine. I will not get the heat. So by the time Ukraine is getting the heat, Ukraine may probably surrender to it.
Right.
So I think there is more that should be done for Ukraine.
We'll return after this break. We'll dive into the sanctions. The question now is sanctions being imposed on Russia because of the war prosecuted against Ukraine. Do you feel this sanction is really having any effect on Russia? Remember that their major oil have been sanctioned. Doesn't mean that others are not doing business with them. We'll take a look at the impact of this sanction and how it's going to affect the war. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, reaching you live from Benin City, Edo State, Nigeria. It's all about the Russia-Ukraine war, and we are taking a look at the war theater because winter is fast approaching. Of recent, Donald, President of America, chose to agree to a sanction meted on major oil giants in Russia. Some are saying that with that, it is going to weaken the financial strength of Russia to prosecute the war. But do you see that having the effect the U.S. NATO thought that that will have in the prosecution of the war against Ukraine?
No, the sanction is not enough. The sanction melted on Russia just now will not so hit Russia because already, you know, America is aware, President Donald Trump is aware that Russia has sympathizers. Example, North Korea, China, Iran. Some of these countries are holding solidarity with Russia. And not because they really like or love Russia, but because of the hate on the man called Donald Trump and also the United States of America. Because some of these countries want to rub shoulder with the United States of America. If you tell them that United States of America is the world's police, they will disagree with you that no, United States of America is not world police. But you and I know that over the years, they've been able to prove to the world that they are world police. But just now, we have some countries like China who economically, they are developing, they are growing. So there is this temptation to say, oh, we too, we could pose a threat to become world police. So because of this political gimmick that is being played by some of these countries, these nations, you discover that there is really need for a more stronger sanction.
Like what kind of sanction? They've been sanctioning Russia to the end that Russia too got angry and sanctioned USA products also in Russia. It was sanction for sanction. You don't buy my oil, I don't buy your oil. After all, Russia, as we speak right now, is the major supplier of gas to Europe, even to Ukraine. So how are they going to hold on to that giant?
That is where I think that there is need for, outside the sanction to be meted of them, there is need to give Ukraine long-range weapons, some of those supersonic weapons, so that, because if this war continue to go the direction it is just now, then the peace is not foreseeable, and once peace is not foreseeable, meaning the war continues. Then if the war continues the way it is now, what will be the fate of Ukraine? And I think that is what other parts of the world, other superpowers, should be able to come together and say, okay, if we know that this war, we cannot achieve peace, and Ukraine is getting the heat the way it is going, then let's give them all necessary support that they need and see whether that could pose as a threat to the man called Putin. And we'll be able to, maybe when Putin gets 1, 2, 3 hits, his own citizens may raise alarm and say, we are going through pains. We are going through this suffering. But look, let us see how this war could come to an end. Because just now, the people are not feeling it. And there is this rumor, if it is true, I do not know, disconnection from social media and the internet, wherein they may not even understand that there is really war between Russia and Ukraine. Because Russians know that Ukrainians are their brothers and sisters. They see themselves to be that, to that extent, they see themselves to be one. So if this war continues like this, are we saying we are going to allow Ukraine to be erased from the surface of the world? Or are we saying that Ukraine should surrender her sovereignty to Russia? Or are we saying that those who tempted, who wore Ukraine to go into this war have now lost faith in Ukraine? And if that is the situation, what should they do? So, one, if we cannot achieve peace, then let the war proper go on.
All right, you said the war proper should go on by giving Ukraine long-range missile weapons to target the heart of Russia. But Russia made just one request. So one request has many, terms and conditions. Number one, if you want the war to end, disband your military. Leave the eastern part of Ukraine, Donbass region, go home, and everything will cease. Because what is happening, it's like Putin, from reports, is beginning to cover that eastern part of Ukraine, which he said really wants to be free. That if Ukraine should leave a particular portion for him, the war will cease. But he said he wants to create a buffer zone between the main Russia and, of course, Ukraine, because of the advent of the EU. And he gave one that strong warning, don't even think about it, joining the European Union. Would this man you're seeing right now agree to that?
He will not. And I think I like the stubbornness of this man. I like his decisive nature. The man takes decision. Despite the fact that so many persons have accused him of being lackadaisical, being unreasonable in the prosecution of this war. So many persons have accused him. So many persons see him that the man is not strong enough to have gone into this war. But I think one thing about him is that the man is not lily-livered. The man is somebody who has taken his decision and stands on his decision. And I think even Putin will respect him for that. And I quote him for that because of his decisive stand on issues of international diplomacy. But again, you look at what is happening in Ukraine, despite the decisive nature of the man, despite his political strength, despite the fact that the man will say no to what he will say no and yes to what he need to say yes to, how is he be able to prosecute the war? What is the strength of his military? Who is being hit most in this war? So when you consider some of these things, you would agree with me that Ukraine is really going through pains just now. But then, again, is that those who woe him, again I repeat, those who woe him into the prosecution of this war have not really helped him to see how he could succeed. Though at a point, after a year, we saw that even Russia got some hits, particularly that period where they were able to penetrate the Russian territory.
And so I saying that that was a time of what was the name of the president, the one that came before Donald Trump? Okay, Joe Biden. Yes, Joe Biden. That it was like giving them massive support. But Trump, according to report, according to speculation, choose to wither on this support.
Yes, because Trump is also considering his relationship with a man called Putin. And you know, the one of the elections, the election before this one that brought Trump, in fact, the election that he lost, I think, or the election that he won, the first tenure
against Hillary Clinton.
Yes, there was an allegation that Putin helped in rigging that election. There was that allegation. What does that mean? It goes to tell you that the strong ties between those two persons. I don't really want to consider what transpired with the election results, no. But if there is a strong ties between these two persons, do you not think, or do we not think that Trump could give 100% of his support to Ukraine? The answer is a no. Because I think that if Trump finds himself in this kind of situation, quagmire, where he needed to take decision on how to invade a country called XYZ, just as Putin has invaded Ukraine, he will get the nod from Putin to so do. So there is this political arrangement, this political arithmetics between these two personalities. So that again will go on to say that was Putin really, Zelensky relying on America totally for the prosecution of the war against Russia, even when he knew that at a point the tenure of then President Joe Biden would expire. 2, the NATO was the promise and assurances given to Zelensky by NATO on 100% reliance on the United States of America. 3, what was the stand of European Union in the war between Russia and Ukraine? And I think that is why I said that from the outset of this program, that Zelensky did not count the cost before the prosecution of this war. If he had done that, the dimiano of the European Union, the United States of America, and NATO members would have suggested to him that, look, don't go this direction, take the other parts. But because he did not take his time to do that, he relied absolutely on the assurances and promises that he was being given by the European Union and NATO. See where he found himself. Now, you NATO, if indeed you promised this man, European Union, if indeed you promised this man that you were going to be of 100% assistance to him in the prosecution of this war, why are you relenting now? Why are you breaking that contract? Whether or not that contract was expressed or
gentlemanly agreement.
Yes, why? So it goes to tell that in anything you do as a leader, you must first consider the fate of your nation, the fate of your people, before making any agreement with any person outside your jurisdiction.
Oh,
because now it's crystal clear that there is a possibility that they may fail him.
All right, well, want to take another break. When we return, we're going to tackle this question if Donald Trump's option for peace between Russia and Ukraine has been exhausted. Because he said if he's elected as Mr. President, the Russian war will be a thing of the past. So we are still there, and winter, they say, is coming to stay. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, and we're about commencing our decent today's edition. Well, Donald Trump made a promise that within how many months in office he's going to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine. Has he exhausted all options? Do you feel Donald Trump can really do that? Because they're looking at him as a man with a magic wand.
I think that was a campaign strategy during the American election. And the man succeeded in using that to woo the hearts and the minds of Americans to succeed. But now that he has succeeded, is it easier for him to penetrate the mind and the hearts of the man called Putin to ensure that there is peace between Russia and Ukraine? The answer is a no. So that goes again to tell you that whatsoever you do, total reliance on the might and strength, wisdom, intelligence, understanding of a man may not help you. So what you need to do is to consider some other factors. Maybe again, like we Africans, we always consider the God factor. That's why you will see that somebody will tell you why Israel is being prosecuting war. Somebody here in Nigeria will tell you, oh, God of Israel, come and fight for us. so
Barrister.
you see the situation we find ourselves. But that again is helping us to maintain peace, either by crook or by hook. So I want to again tell, look at this matter holistically.
Yes.
That Donald Trump may not really be the factor that could broker peace between Russia and Ukraine.
Then what do you think will be the factor?
Other European nations should intervene.
But they seem to be scared.
They were not scared because they wore Ukraine into this war. They weren't scared. So now, if they can see how European Union could intervene and meet maybe 50% of the conditions of the man called Putin, even if those conditions will be deemed tyrannical, I think they should see how they go. Because I tell you, my brother, Ukraine is bleeding. Ukraine is going. Are we going to be silent and pretend that nothing is happening? But when the heat is there, and you cannot see that even Ukrainians are not giving up towards their strength.
Then what is the world? What is this World Organization doing about this? The UN, United Nations, what are they doing about this?
Again, before now we have what is called the League of Nations.
Now we have the UN.
The League of Nations came to existence in 1919
after the
First World War.
Yeah.
And you can see that the League of Nations died a natural death because they were not able to sustain world peace. Immediately the Second World War broke out.
Yes.
So I see it again that though the United Nations have been able to sustain all this while, we have more years of peace in the world, pretentiously anyway, than what we have.
Why would you say pretentiously?
Yes, because if you look at, we have skirmishes of war here and there.
Yeah. But not a world war,
not a world war.
All right.
So that is why I say pretentiously. And now we have not been able to manage that world peace that the United Nations seem to stand for or stand on, as the case may be. So if that is the situation, how do we manage what we have just now? Because the United Nations is just doing damage control, patch here, patch there. We saw the Israel Hamas, we saw Israel Iran, we saw different nations going into war. We saw China, the other small nation, no nation is small. Taiwan. We saw North Korea, South Korea, like that. Here and there, you still have skirmishes of war. So that is to tell you that anywhere man exists, there is possibility of tendency for crisis.
Crisis.
So, but what do we do? How will they manage this situation? They should do all they can to see how they can remedy the situation by helping Ukraine. Maybe if those long-range weapons are given to Ukraine, as I did say, and there is heat at the heart of Moscow, Putin may have a rethink.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister Emmanuel Obakpolo. He said the solution for from his own angle is that Ukraine should be given access to long-range weapons, missiles, Tomahawk, you just name it. But Putin said something. If I gives them that country or that individual will be in his black book. So maybe right now the fear of Putin is the beginning of wisdom in international relations. We don't know, because think about it. Ukraine really is bleeding. They've been bleeding. How come no one can say, Russia, please, enough? Or should the world now bend to the will of Putin by meeting his terms and conditions? Zelensky, disband the military, don't join NATO, leave the Donbass region, go home, there'll be peace. Do you see Zelensky breaking at this point? After all, winter is approaching. Do it again next week, Tuesday, God willing. Bye for now.